Everyone came to witness Daniel Choi choose Korea's richest heiress, but nobody expected the woman standing quietly in the corner to become the only person he could not ignore. The Grand Seoul Palace had never looked more magnificent. Thousands of golden lights reflected across the marble floors. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the room where the most powerful families in South Korea gathered for one unforgettable evening. Business leaders, political figures, international investors. Everyone important was there. And everyone believed they already knew what would happen. Tonight was not just a celebration. It was a decision. Daniel Choi, the 40-year-old Korean-American CEO of Choi Global Holdings. A man known across the world for his intelligence, discipline, and absolute control. He had built an empire from nothing but ambition and a family legacy that demanded perfection. Every move he made was calculated. Every decision had a purpose. Daniel Choi was not a man who allowed emotions to interfere with his future. That was why everyone believed his choice would be obvious. Sophia Kim, Korea's richest heiress. The daughter of one of the most influential families in Asia. Beautiful. Educated. Powerful. A woman whose name carried the same weight as Daniel's. Their families had been connected for years. Their businesses complemented each other. Their marriage would create an alliance that could reshape the future of both companies. To everyone watching, Sophia Kim was not just the perfect partner. She was the only logical choice. She stood beneath the lights wearing an elegant gown, surrounded by people who already imagined her becoming the future Mrs. Choi. The guests smiled. The cameras waited. The rumors had already become reality in everyone's minds. But nobody noticed the one person Daniel was actually looking at. Across the crowded ballroom. Near the entrance. A young woman quietly carrying a silver tray through the crowd. Maya Richardson. A black maid working at the Choi estate. To most people in that room, she was invisible. She was someone who prepared the space before important people arrived. Someone who cleaned after conversations she was never invited to join. Someone whose name was rarely remembered. Her uniform was simple. Her movements were careful. Her presence was almost unnoticed. And Maya was completely comfortable with that. She had learned long ago that some people were judged by their family names, while others were judged by the work they did. So she never searched for attention. She never tried to enter a world that did not welcome her. She simply did what she believed was right. That was exactly why Daniel noticed her. A young employee accidentally dropped a tray near the entrance. Several guests turned with annoyance. A few whispered. The employee froze, embarrassed by the mistake. But before anyone could criticize him, Maya stepped forward. She placed her own tray aside and helped him collect the broken pieces. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. The employee shook his head. "I'm sorry. I ruined everything." Maya smiled gently. "No. It was just an accident. No cameras captured the moment. No powerful person was watching." She gained nothing from helping him. Yet she still chose kindness. And somehow, that simple act caught the attention of the man who had spent his entire life surrounded by people trying to impress him. Daniel Choi had met thousands of people who wanted something from him. His money. His influence. His family name. But Maya Richardson wanted nothing. She did not even know he was watching. "Daniel." Sophia's voice pulled him back. The room slowly became silent. Everyone turned toward him. The announcement everyone had waited for was about to begin. The world expected him to choose the woman standing beside power. But for the first time in years, Daniel Choi found himself questioning what power truly meant. Because the person everyone overlooked was the only person who made him want to look closer. And that night, before anyone knew Maya Richardson's story, Daniel had already taken the first step toward discovering it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe kindness and dignity still matter, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Maya Richardson. Nobody remembered the woman who served behind the scenes that night, but Daniel Choi could not forget the kindness she showed when she believed nobody was watching. Long before Maya Richardson became the person who captured the attention of one of the most powerful men in Seoul, she had already learned how to survive in a world that rarely noticed people like her. Every morning before the sun reached the glass towers of the city, Maya was already awake. The Choi estate was enormous. Polished marble floors. Expensive artwork. Rooms filled with history and wealth. To most people, the mansion represented success. A place where powerful families gathered to make decisions that affected thousands of lives. But to Maya, it was simply where she worked. A place where she quietly performed the responsibilities most people never thought about. She prepared rooms before important meetings. She organized details before major events. She made sure everything was perfect before guests arrived. And then she disappeared into the background. That was the reality she had accepted. In a world where people judged others by their last name, their bank account, or their position, Maya knew she was often seen as nothing more than a uniform. But she never allowed that to define her. Because Maya Richardson understood something many powerful people had forgotten. A person's value did not come from how others treated them. It came from how they treated others. The staff members at the Choi estate knew her differently. They knew she was the person who stayed late when someone needed help. The person who shared her own lunch with new employees. The person who remembered birthdays and small details that everyone else ignored. But the guests who walked through the mansion rarely noticed. They were too focused on expensive watches, family names, and business deals. They looked for power. Not kindness. And that was why Daniel Choi found himself curious. After the gala, he began noticing things he had ignored before. The way Maya spoke respectfully to everyone. The way she helped people without expecting recognition. The way she remained calm even when surrounded by people who could never understand her life. Daniel had spent years surrounded by individuals who wanted something from him. Executives wanted opportunities. Families wanted alliances. People wanted access to his influence. Everyone had a reason for being close to Daniel Choi. Everyone except Maya. She did not know his personal wealth. She did not care about his reputation. She treated him the same way she treated everyone else. And somehow, that bothered him. Because Daniel had built his entire life around control. Everything had a purpose. Every relationship had a reason. Every decision had a calculation. But Maya did things that could not be calculated. One evening, after a difficult business meeting, Daniel returned to the estate later than usual. The mansion was quiet. The lights were dim. But as he walked through the hallway, he noticed a small light coming from the kitchen. Inside, Maya was standing alone. She was preparing a meal. Not for herself. For one of the older employees who had worked overtime. "You should go home," the employee said softly. Maya smiled. "I will. I just wanted to make sure you ate something first. You always take care of everyone." She looked down for a moment. "Someone has to." Daniel stood outside the doorway, silently watching. No cameras. No guests. No reason to impress anyone. Maya was simply being kind. And for the first time, Daniel understood why he could not stop thinking about her. It was not because she was different from everyone else. It was because she was the only person in his world who did not need anything from him. When Maya finally noticed him, she immediately stepped back. "Mr. Choi." Daniel looked at the food she prepared. "You do this often?" Maya nodded. "Sometimes people just need someone to notice." Those words stayed with him. Because Daniel Choi had spent his entire life building an empire where everyone noticed him. But Maya Richardson had built a life where she noticed everyone else. And that was something money could never buy. Meanwhile, across Seoul, Sophia Kim was preparing for the future everyone believed belonged to her. She had the wealth, the family name, the perfect image. But she did not know yet that the greatest challenge to her place beside Daniel would not come from another powerful family. It would come from a woman who never wanted attention. A woman who stood quietly in the background. And somehow, became the one person Daniel Choi could not stop seeing. Everyone believed Sophia Kim had already won the future beside Daniel Choi, but she never expected the biggest challenge to come from a woman who never wanted his attention. In the world of Seoul's elite, Sophia Kim had always been considered the perfect choice. She was born into privilege. Raised among powerful families. Trained to understand the responsibilities that came with wealth and influence. As the only daughter of the Kim dynasty group, Sophia represented everything society admired. Beauty. Intelligence. Elegance. Power. Her name opened doors before she even entered a room. And for years, everyone believed her future was already decided. She would stand beside Daniel Choi. The man whose empire stretched across continents. The CEO who represented everything her family valued. Together, they would create a partnership that would strengthen two of the most influential families in Asia. To the outside world, there was no question. Sophia Kim belonged beside Daniel Choi. But recently, Sophia noticed something she could not ignore. Daniel was changing. Not dramatically. Not in a way most people would notice. But she noticed. She noticed the way his attention moved whenever Maya Richardson entered the room. She noticed the way his expression softened when he spoke to her. She noticed how a man who usually ignored small details suddenly remembered everything about one woman. At first, Sophia convinced herself it was temporary. A passing curiosity. Nothing more. After all, Daniel Choi was not the kind of man who would allow emotions to influence his decisions. He was practical. Calculated. Controlled. That was the man she had always known. But then she began seeing the difference. Daniel did not look at Maya because of her appearance. He looked at her because of who she was. And that was something Sophia could not compete with. Because Sophia could offer Daniel everything the world expected. A powerful family. A perfect image. A future built on success. But Maya offered something completely different. Something Sophia had never needed to understand before. A genuine connection. Meanwhile, Maya Richardson remained unaware of the silent conflict forming around her. She continued her daily routine at the Choi estate. She arranged flowers. Prepared rooms. Helped employees. She never imagined that the most powerful man in the house was paying attention to her. To Maya, Daniel Choi was still her employer. A person from a world far above her own. She did not dream about changing her life. She did not imagine standing beside someone like him. She simply believed that every person deserved kindness. One afternoon, while organizing old books in the estate library, Maya found Daniel standing near the window. The sunlight passed through the glass, creating a quiet moment between them. "You know a lot about art," Daniel said. Maya looked surprised. "Not really. I just enjoy it." Daniel looked at the books she was holding. "Most people only notice things that have value." Maya smiled slightly. "Maybe because they only look for things they can own." The answer caught him off guard. Because nobody spoke to Daniel Choi that way. People usually measured their words around him. They thought about his position before they thought about their honesty. But Maya did not. She simply answered. And somehow, that made him listen. "What do you notice?" Daniel asked. Maya looked around the room. The things people forget. The room became quiet. Because Daniel realized that was exactly what made her different. She noticed people who were ignored. She cared about things others overlooked. And maybe that was why he could not stop noticing her. Later that evening, Sophia stood alone inside her family's mansion. She looked at the city lights outside her window. For the first time in her life, she faced a challenge money could not solve. She could not buy Daniel's attention. She could not negotiate his feelings. She could not compete with something that was never about status. Because Maya Richardson was not trying to take Daniel Choi away. She was simply being herself. And somehow, that was becoming the one thing Daniel valued most. The world still believed Sophia Kim was the obvious choice. But Daniel Choi was beginning to discover that the obvious choice was not always the right one. Sometimes the person who changes your life is not the one standing beside you in the spotlight, but the one quietly showing kindness when nobody is there to see. The rain covered Seoul like a silver curtain that night. Inside the Choi estate, the usually bright halls were silent. The massive mansion that normally hosted powerful executives and wealthy guests felt completely different after midnight. No meetings. No cameras. No expectations. Only silence. Daniel Choi returned home later than usual. Another difficult day. Another battle inside the world he had built. A competitor had challenged one of his company's biggest projects. Investors questioned his decisions. Executives demanded answers. Normally, Daniel would have handled everything without hesitation. That was who he had always been. The man who never showed uncertainty. The man who never allowed emotions to interfere with business. The man who believed every problem had a logical solution. But recently, something had changed. Whenever the world became too complicated, his thoughts returned to one person. Maya Richardson. The woman who never asked for his attention. The woman who never cared about his reputation. The woman who somehow made him question the rules he had followed his entire life. Daniel walked through the quiet hallway of the estate, expecting everyone to already be gone. But then he noticed a small light coming from the kitchen. Curious, he stepped closer. Inside, Maya was standing alone. The elegant kitchen that was usually filled with professional staff was now quiet. Maya was preparing a meal. Not for herself. For one of the older employees who had worked late that evening. The employee looked embarrassed. "You don't have to do this," he said. Maya smiled gently. "I know." "Then why?" She placed the plate on the table. "Because working hard does not mean someone should be forgotten." Daniel stopped outside the doorway. Those words reached him before he even realized why. Because his entire world worked differently. People were remembered. Because they had influence. Because they had money. Because they could offer something valuable. But Maya remembered people because they were human. No business advantage. No hidden purpose. No expectation of reward. She simply cared. And that was something Daniel Choi rarely saw. When the older employee left, Maya finally noticed him. Her expression immediately changed. "Mr. Choi." Daniel looked at the meal on the table. "You made this for him?" Maya nodded. "He worked all day. He is an employee. The company already pays him." The words came naturally. The words of a businessman. Practical. Cold. But Maya did not become defensive. She only looked at him calmly. "Yes, Mr. Choi. But being paid does not mean people stop getting tired." The kitchen became completely silent. Daniel was used to people agreeing with him. He was used to people changing their opinions because of his position. But Maya did not challenge him with anger. She challenged him with honesty. And somehow, that affected him more. "Why do you always do this?" Daniel asked. Maya looked confused. "Do what?" "Take care of everyone. For a moment, she looked toward the floor. Then she answered quietly. Because I know what it feels like when nobody notices you. Daniel said nothing. Because that sentence revealed more than she intended. Behind her calm smile was a story he did not know. Behind her kindness was a strength built from difficult experiences. And for the first time, Daniel Choi wondered how much of Maya Richardson he had never seen. The next day, he found himself asking questions he had never cared about before. Who was Maya before the uniform? What dreams had she given up? What had shaped the woman who could remain kind in a world that often ignored her? The answers would change the way he saw her forever. Because Maya Richardson was not simply a maid working inside his family's estate. She was a person who had survived battles nobody knew existed. Meanwhile, Sophia Kim watched the situation from a distance. She saw the small changes in Daniel. The questions. The attention. The respect. And for the first time, Korea's richest heiress realized something she never expected. The biggest challenge to her future with Daniel Choi was not another powerful family. It was a woman who had no wealth, no title, and no desire to compete. A woman who simply remained herself. And somehow, that was becoming the one thing Daniel could never ignore. The world saw a maid wearing a simple uniform, but Daniel Choi discovered a story of sacrifice, strength, and dreams that had been hidden for years. For the first time in his life, Daniel Choi found himself searching for answers that had nothing to do with business. He had spent decades analyzing companies, studying competitors, predicting the decisions of powerful people. But Maya Richardson was different. She was not a business problem to solve. She was a person he wanted to understand. After that night in the kitchen, one question continued to return to his mind. Who was Maya before she became a maid at the Choi estate? What dreams had she left behind? And what had shaped the woman who could remain kind in a world that often ignored her? The answer surprised him. One afternoon, Daniel sat alone in his private office, looking through information about Maya's background. He expected to find an ordinary story. A simple explanation. But the more he learned, the quieter the room became. Maya Richardson was not always someone standing in the background. Years earlier, she had a completely different future. She was a talented young woman with dreams of creating something meaningful. She loved art. She loved design. She had the ability to see beauty in places other people ignored. A forgotten street. An old building. A person nobody stopped to notice. She believed every ordinary thing carried a story. But life changed before she could follow that dream. When her family faced difficult circumstances, Maya made a choice. She stepped away from her own future to support the people she loved. She worked harder. She carried responsibilities quietly. She sacrificed opportunities that others would have protected. And she never told anyone how much it cost her. Daniel looked at the information in silence. Because for the first time, he understood something important. Maya was not in a lower position because she lacked ability. She was there because she had chosen responsibility over herself. And that was a kind of strength Daniel had never learned from the powerful people around him. In his world, sacrifice was often discussed in business meetings. Executives talked about commitment. Leaders talked about dedication. But Maya lived those words without needing recognition. Later that evening, Daniel found her in the estate garden. The sunset painted the sky with warm colors as Maya carefully arranged flowers near the entrance. She looked peaceful. Like someone who had accepted her life, even though it was different from the one she once imagined. Maya. She turned around. Mr. Choi. Daniel looked at the flowers in her hands. You studied design. Her expression changed slightly. Surprise. Then a quiet smile. A long time ago. Why did you stop? The garden became silent. The wind moved gently through the trees. Finally, Maya answered. Because sometimes life asks you to choose what matters most. Daniel watched her carefully. And you chose your family. She nodded. Yes. There was no anger in her voice. No regret. Only acceptance. That surprised him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you chose differently? Daniel asked. Maya looked at the flowers. For a moment, sadness appeared in her eyes. Sometimes I wonder. She paused. But wondering is not the same as regretting. Daniel stayed quiet. Because he realized something. Maya Richardson had not lost her dreams. She had transformed them into something else. Her kindness. Her patience. Her ability to see people. Those were the results of everything she had endured. The woman everyone saw as a maid was someone who had fought invisible battles and carried invisible burdens. And suddenly, Daniel no longer saw the uniform. He saw the person. Meanwhile, Sophia Kim was beginning to understand the situation more clearly. Daniel was not simply curious about Maya. He admired her. And that was something Sophia could not overcome with wealth, influence, or a perfect image. Because Maya Richardson possessed something that could never be inherited. A genuine heart. And Daniel Choi was starting to realize that the woman everyone overlooked had a value far greater than anyone expected. Everyone thought Sophia Kim had already secured her place beside Daniel Choi, until the woman she underestimated showed a strength that money and status could never create. The annual Choi family gathering was one of the most important events of the year. Inside the grand estate, powerful families gathered beneath crystal chandeliers and surrounded themselves with conversations about influence, business, and legacy. Every person in the room understood the importance of the evening. This was where alliances were strengthened. Where reputations were protected. Where the future of powerful families was quietly decided. And once again, everyone expected to see Daniel Choi standing beside Sophia Kim. The perfect match. The perfect partnership. The future everyone had already written. But something was different now. Daniel was no longer the same man who entered that ballroom months before. Before, he saw people through the lens of power. Family names. Business connections. Social positions. But after knowing Maya Richardson, he started noticing things he had ignored his entire life. The kindness of ordinary people. The struggles hidden behind quiet faces. The strength of those who never received recognition. And Sophia Kim noticed the change. She noticed it when Daniel looked across the room toward Maya. She noticed it when he listened to Maya's words more carefully than the opinions of wealthy executives. She noticed it when he treated a woman wearing a simple uniform with the same respect he showed billionaires. For the first time, Sophia realized something painful. Maya was not trying to compete with her. She was not trying to take Daniel away. She did not even realize there was a competition. And somehow, that made her impossible to defeat. That evening, during the family dinner, Maya quietly moved through the room as usual. She served guests. Organized details. Stayed out of conversations that were not meant for her. But when one of the younger employees accidentally spilled a drink near an important guest, the atmosphere changed. Several people looked annoyed. The employee immediately lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Before anyone could criticize him, Maya stepped forward. It was an accident. She helped clean the table. Then she looked at the nervous employee. Everyone makes mistakes. That does not mean they deserve to be embarrassed. The room became quiet. Because Maya was not protecting someone powerful. She was protecting someone everyone else had already judged. Daniel watched from across the table. And Sophia saw his reaction. That small moment told her everything. Daniel admired Maya. Not because of where she came from. But because of who she was. Later that night, Sophia found Maya alone in the hallway. The sounds of the dinner faded behind the closed doors. For a moment, neither woman spoke. "You understand the world Daniel Choi belongs to, don't you?" Sophia asked. Maya looked at her calmly. "I understand. He has responsibilities." "Yes. His life is connected to powerful people. Powerful families." Maya remained silent. Sophia studied her carefully. "I expected you to fight for him." Maya looked surprised. "I never asked him to choose me." That answer caught Sophia off guard. "Then why are you still here?" Maya looked down for a moment. Then she answered softly. "Because respect should not depend on someone's position." The hallway became completely silent. Sophia expected insecurity. She expected jealousy. She expected someone desperate to change their life. But Maya showed none of that. She was not trying to become powerful. She already understood her own value. And that was the moment Sophia realized something she never expected. The woman she saw as a weakness was actually the strongest person in the room. From a distance, Daniel witnessed the conversation. He saw Maya standing with confidence. Not demanding. Not competing. Simply being herself. And for the first time, Daniel Choi understood why she affected him so deeply. Maya did not make him feel more powerful. She reminded him that power was not the only thing that mattered. Meanwhile, Sophia returned home that night with a truth she could no longer avoid. She could offer Daniel a perfect alliance. A powerful family. A future approved by everyone. But Maya offered something completely different. A connection without conditions. A kindness without calculation. And that was something no amount of wealth could replace. Because some battles are not won by having more. Some battles are decided by the person who reaches your heart first. And Daniel Choi's heart was no longer standing where the world expected it to be. A man can inherit an empire, control a fortune, and satisfy the expectations of millions, but the hardest decision is choosing whether to follow the world's plan or his own truth. The day everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Inside the headquarters of Choi Global Holdings, the atmosphere was different from any other day. The highest executives gathered in the private conference room. Family members arrived early. Investors watched closely. The media waited outside the building, ready to capture the announcement that could reshape two powerful families. Everyone believed they already knew the outcome. Daniel Choi would choose Sophia Kim. The richest heiress in Korea. The woman whose family name carried the same influence as his own. The woman who represented the perfect future. For years, the decision seemed inevitable. A partnership between two powerful families. A marriage that would strengthen their companies. A future designed by tradition and expectation. But inside his office, Daniel stood alone. On his desk was the agreement everyone expected him to sign. A carefully planned future. A path created before he ever had the chance to choose. Years ago, Daniel would have accepted it without hesitation. Because that was the world he understood. Power required sacrifice. Success required control. Feelings were distractions. But everything changed after Maya Richardson entered his life. He thought about the woman who never asked for anything. The woman who treated everyone with the same respect, whether they had power or not. The woman who reminded him that people were more than their titles. For the first time, Daniel questioned the rules he had followed his entire life. Was a perfect future still perfect if it was not truly his choice? Meanwhile, Sophia Kim prepared for the announcement. She looked exactly as the world expected her to look. Elegant. Confident. Unshaken. But inside, she already knew. She knew Daniel's heart was no longer standing where everyone expected it to be. Because she had seen the difference. When people spoke to Daniel about business, he listened. But when Maya spoke, he understood. When people praised his success, he accepted it. But when Maya showed kindness, he remembered it. The announcement ceremony began that evening. The grand hall was filled with influential figures from across Seoul. Cameras flashed. Reporters waited. The Choi and Kim families stood together. The world held its breath. Daniel walked onto the stage. His expression remained calm. Controlled. The same expression that had made people believe nothing could ever affect him. He looked across the room. At the families who had guided his life. At the people who believed they knew what was best for him. Then he spoke. I know everyone came here expecting a certain announcement. The room became silent. Many people believe the right decision is the one that creates the most power. He paused. But I have spent my entire life choosing what benefits my company, my family, and my responsibilities. His eyes lowered for a moment. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to ask what I truly wanted. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because Daniel Choi was saying something no one expected to hear. A man who built his identity around control was admitting that he had been controlled by expectations. He continued. A person's value is not determined by their family name, their wealth, or their position. The guests exchanged uncertain looks. Sophia remained silent. She already understood. Daniel looked toward the crowd. I cannot build my future around a choice that only makes sense to everyone else. The room froze. The perfect alliance everyone expected was disappearing. The future that had been planned for years was changing in a single moment. And somewhere inside the Choi estate, Maya Richardson had no idea that the decision being made was connected to her. She never asked Daniel to choose her. She never wanted a place among powerful families. She never believed she belonged in his world. But Daniel finally understood something. Maya did not enter his life to give him more power. She entered his life to show him what truly mattered. And that day, Daniel Choi made the most difficult decision of his life. Not choosing between two women. But choosing between the person the world wanted him to be, and the person he finally wanted to become. The world admired Daniel Choi for choosing Maya Richardson, but they were not prepared for the storm that came after he chose the woman everyone believed did not belong. The announcement changed everything. Within hours, the news spread across Seoul. Every major business network was discussing the same story. Daniel Choi had rejected the future everyone expected. The alliance with the Kim family. The partnership between two powerful names. The perfect image that had been carefully created for years. Gone. People wanted explanations. Investors questioned his decision. Business leaders wondered if emotion had influenced the man known for his careful judgment. And the Choi family faced a reality they never expected. Daniel had made a choice they could not control. But while the world focused on Daniel's decision, another person carried the weight of the attention. Maya Richardson. The woman who had spent years staying invisible suddenly became the person everyone wanted to see. And she was not prepared for it. She never searched for fame. She never wanted luxury. She never imagined standing beside one of the most powerful men in Seoul. But suddenly, strangers were judging her life. They judged her background. They judged her position. They judged whether someone like her belonged beside Daniel Choi. Some people admired her story. Others questioned it. They saw the uniform she once wore. They saw the job she performed. But they did not see the years of sacrifice behind it. They did not see the kindness she gave when nobody was watching. They did not see the strength it took to remain humble in a world that constantly reminded her of what she did not have. Inside the Choi estate, Maya stood quietly near the window, looking at the city lights. Daniel found her there. "You've been reading the comments," he said. Maya looked down at her phone. "People are only saying what they think." Daniel stepped closer. And do you believe them? She remained silent for a moment. I don't want my life to become a reason people attack you. Those words surprised him. Because even now, after everything that happened, Maya was thinking about him before herself. Daniel looked at her carefully. You think I regret my decision? Maya did not answer. But her silence said enough. Daniel shook his head. I spent my entire life making choices because they were expected. He looked toward the city. This is the first time I chose something because it was real. The room became quiet. Because Maya understood something. Daniel was not protecting her because he thought she was weak. He was standing beside her because he respected her. Meanwhile, inside the Choi Global Holdings boardroom, the pressure continued. Executives gathered around the table. Some were concerned. Some were frustrated. You understand what this decision means, one executive said. The Kim alliance was valuable. Daniel listened calmly. He knew the risks. He knew the consequences. But he also knew something else. A company could recover from losing a partnership. A reputation could recover from criticism. But losing the values that shaped a person was something much harder to rebuild. Daniel placed a new strategy document on the table. I did not make this decision without preparation. The executives looked surprised. The plan showed a different future. A future where the company could continue growing without depending on the alliance everyone expected. For the first time, they realized Daniel had not acted emotionally. He had acted with conviction. He was not destroying his empire for Maya. He was proving his empire was strong enough to survive an honest choice. Later that evening, Maya stood beside Daniel outside the estate. The city stretched before them. I never wanted to change your life, she said. Daniel looked at her. You didn't change my life. A pause. You reminded me that it was mine to choose. Maya looked at him quietly. And in that moment, she finally understood. Daniel had not chosen her because she was different from everyone else. He had chosen her because she showed him something everyone else had forgotten. That a person's worth was never created by status. It was revealed through character. But beyond the lights of Seoul, the world was still watching. The families. The investors. The people who believed they knew what belonged beside Daniel Choi. And soon, they would discover whether a choice built on respect could survive a world built on judgment. Years later, people would remember Daniel Choi's empire, but they would remember even more the woman who taught him that true power was never about status. Time revealed what the world once failed to see. The headlines eventually disappeared. The rumors became distant memories. The people who once questioned Daniel Choi's decision slowly became silent. Because years after that unforgettable announcement, Daniel and Maya were still standing together. Not because their journey had been easy. Not because everyone accepted them immediately. But because what they built was stronger than public opinion. It was built on respect. When Maya Richardson first entered Daniel's world, people only saw what she lacked. No powerful family. No billionaire background. No famous name. They saw a maid wearing a simple uniform. They saw someone standing quietly behind the important people in the room. But Daniel saw something different. He saw the woman who helped others when nobody was watching. The woman who carried responsibilities without asking for recognition. The woman who sacrificed her own dreams while still keeping her kindness. And that was the reason everything changed. Years later, the Choi Foundation hosted its largest charity event ever. The same kind of event where powerful families gathered. The same kind of room where people once judged Maya before knowing her story. The grand ballroom shined beneath thousands of lights. Business leaders filled the room. Reporters waited. Guests whispered as Daniel Choi entered. But this time, everyone looked beside him. Not because they expected to see Korea's richest heiress. Not because they expected another powerful alliance. They looked at Maya Richardson. The woman who was once invisible. The woman who once stood at the edge of every room. Now she walked beside Daniel with confidence and grace. Not because someone gave her permission to belong, but because she had always belonged. A reporter approached them during the event. "Mrs. Choi, many people say your story changed how society views success. What do you believe is the reason?" Maya looked around the ballroom. She saw faces that once ignored her. People who once measured her worth by her position. Then she smiled softly. "I think people often notice what someone owns before they notice who they are." The room became quiet. Because those words carried the same truth she had lived with for years. Daniel watched her. And even after everything changed, he still saw the same person. The woman who never needed wealth to prove her value. The woman who never needed a title to deserve respect. Later that evening, Daniel and Maya stood together outside the ballroom. The city lights reflected across the glass windows. "Do you ever think about that night?" Daniel asked. Maya smiled. "The night everyone thought you would choose someone else?" Daniel nodded. She looked down at the city. "I think about how strange life can be." "What do you mean?" "For years, I tried to stay invisible." She paused. "And somehow, the one person who noticed me changed everything." Daniel remained silent. Because he knew the truth. Maya had not changed his life by giving him more power. She changed it by showing him what power could never provide. Compassion. Humility. A reason to become better. Meanwhile, Sophia Kim eventually understood the truth she once struggled to accept. She had not lost because Maya had something more than her. She had lost because Daniel was never searching for the perfect image. He was searching for something real. Because wealth could create influence. Power could create respect. But character created something much deeper. A legacy. The woman everyone overlooked became the woman everyone remembered. And the man who controlled an empire finally learned the greatest lesson of all. A person's value was never measured by where they stood in society. It was measured by what they carried inside. And that day, the world remembered what dignity looks like.